Have you ever had the feeling that something crucial is missing from the creation story? There's a reason for that. An entire chapter of Genesis was deliberately removed by the elders of Israel, a sacred text that revealed what happened before. In the beginning. This information was considered too dangerous for common knowledge, but fragments of this truth have survived through the millennia. Today you'll discover why Genesis begins with darkness and chaos, what existed before that, and how this revelation will completely transform your understanding of the Bible, human purpose, and your own spiritual awakening. The implications are so profound that they will forever change your view of reality. Stay until the end of this video to learn the complete truth, and if you value content that reveals hidden knowledge in the scriptures, leave your like and subscribe to this channel right now. Have you ever wondered why the book of Genesis begins so abruptly? In the beginning, but what was there before this beginning? This question has intrigued truth seekers for millennia. Man, it's like we're opening a book halfway through. What many scholars have discovered is that ancient traditions suggest a zero chapter was deliberately removed from the sacred texts by elders who considered its content too profound for common knowledge. This chapter would have contained revelations about spiritual events that preceded the material creation described in Genesis 1:1. Revelations that could completely expand our understanding of spirituality and the very act of creation. The journey of awakening consciousness frequently leads us to examine sacred texts more deeply. And let's face it, isn't it true? The creation story seems to begin in the middle of something already in progress. When we read, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep," doesn't it seem strange? As if something had already happened before. Many dedicated Bible scholars propose that this was not the true beginning, but rather a recreation after cosmic events that ancient religious leaders preferred to keep reserved. This knowledge would have been preserved only for those considered spiritually prepared to understand such revelations, thus maintaining a deeper understanding of the origins of existence. What would this lost chapter contain that would be so transformative? According to various researchers of ancient texts, it would describe in detail a series of fundamental spiritual events, explaining the true nature of the primordial light mentioned in Genesis and its differentiation from darkness. This would not be a simple creation story, but a profound revelation about the nature of the divine presence and the spiritual dimensions that preceded the physical world. Just imagine a text that would explain how spiritual light was present even before physical light was created. This narrative would have explained the spiritual foundations of the reality we experience, offering a much broader context for our existence and purpose as created beings. For those on the path of spiritual awakening, the absence of this chapter represents a fundamental piece of the cosmic puzzle that has been preserved for a specific time. It's like trying to understand a movie by watching only from the second act onwards. Many who deeply study the scriptures suggest that we can understand this knowledge through sincere prayer and dedicated study. Try this exercise. During your time of spiritual reflection, meditate on the question, "What was there before the beginning?" and remain open to guidance that may arise. Many faithful report surprising insights about the nature of reality when exploring this question with a sincere desire for understanding. This approach shows how the sincere search for truth can reconnect us with ancient wisdom that has been carefully preserved outside the most well-known records. Understanding this lost chapter is not just a historical curiosity, but potentially a key to our deeper spiritual understanding. As more people awaken to an expanded spiritual consciousness, many teachings that were hidden seem to naturally resurface in the collective understanding. Have you ever had that feeling that there is something more, something beyond what we've been taught about our origins? This is often the first sign that your consciousness is expanding to embrace greater truths. Scholars of ancient texts suggest that the complete understanding of this knowledge is only revealed when we are truly ready to integrate these revelations into our journey with Jesus. And perhaps it's no coincidence that in an era of profound spiritual transformation like ours, interest in these truths is growing exponentially. Before the earth we know, before the stars and the firmament, there was another world, a primordial realm of pure energy and light. This concept, though it seems revolutionary, is subtly present between the lines of Scripture. And the Spirit hovered over the waters. But why? Why were there already waters when the creation narrative begins? This is the clue that leads us to a deeper understanding. The creation described in Genesis may actually be a recreation. Scholars who have dedicated decades to studying ancient texts point to evidence that there existed a previous spiritual creation, inhabited by primordial beings of light, created by the Creator as his first conscious manifestations in the cosmos. These beings, different from the angels we know, would be entities of pure light and consciousness, created before the existence of matter. Look how fascinating. There would be a cosmic hierarchy long before any physical structure. These primordial beings lived in perfect harmony with divine energy, in a state of continuous illumination. However, something drastically changed in this reality. Just as we see in our own journey of awakening consciousness, freedom brings with it the possibility of choice, and not all choices lead to harmony. A group of these beings endowed with free will would have rebelled against the Creator's original purpose, desiring to establish an alternative order in the cosmos that reflected their own visions. This cosmic rebellion was not a simple disagreement, but a true conflict of fundamental energies that shook the very structure of the primordial creation. When you feel that inexplicable sensation that there is a greater struggle happening beyond what we can see, know that this might be an echo of this primordial conflict in your awakened consciousness. The rebellion of the beings of light would have created such a disruption in cosmic frequencies that the result was what Genesis describes as darkness upon the face of the deep. This chaos was not an accident, but the direct consequence of the rupture of the original harmony. The text of Genesis, in mentioning that the earth was without form and void, would actually be describing the catastrophic result of this first rebellion, a state of disorder that needed to be reorganized. The source of all that is, in his infinite wisdom, did not abandon his creation to permanent chaos. The plan to restore cosmic order began with what we know as "let there be light." But notice the subtlety here. It wasn't that light didn't exist before, but that it needed to be separated from darkness, and divided the light from the darkness. This fundamental act was not simply creating something new, but reinstating an order where chaos had taken over. As we progress on our path of spiritual awakening, we can perceive how this pattern of disorder followed by reorganization repeats in our own life. When you feel an emotional or spiritual chaos, you can apply this divine principle. Invoke the light of consciousness to separate what is true from what is illusory in your experience. Understanding this first creation and its subsequent rebellion is not just theoretical knowledge, but a practical key to understanding the cycles of order and chaos in our spiritual journey. Many of the challenges we face on our path of spiritual awakening reflect, on a smaller scale, this original cosmic conflict. When you face internal resistance while seeking a higher consciousness, you are in a way experiencing the same pattern that occurred at the beginning of time. The good news is that, just as the Creator restored order from chaos, we too have that same inherent capacity. The next time you feel you're fighting against forces that seem to want to keep you in unconsciousness, remember, you are participating in a cosmic drama that began even before the earth existed, and the light of consciousness always prevails, even when temporarily obscured. Fragments of this lost story haven't completely disappeared. Like pieces of a cosmic puzzle, they are scattered across various ancient texts that have survived on the margins of official tradition. The Book of Enoch, for example, although not included in the biblical canon, contains fascinating narratives about celestial beings and pre-Diluvian events that seem to fill some of the gaps in Genesis. Wow, it's like finding missing pieces of a treasure map. This text, considered canonical by the Ethiopian Church, describes watchful angels, celestial beings who interacted with primitive humanity, transmitting forbidden knowledge. Many scholars see in these narratives echoes of the primordial rebellion that would have occurred before material creation, thus connecting the dots between the lost chapter and our current world. Another incredible repository of these ancient truths is the Zohar, a fundamental text that presents profound interpretations of the Torah. Without falling into excessive mysticism, we can appreciate how this text suggests multiple layers of meaning in each word of Genesis, revealing a much more complex cosmology than a literal reading suggests. The Zohar speaks of worlds that existed before ours, of kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the children of Israel, a reference that many scholars of awakening consciousness interpret as previous cycles of creation. When you study these texts with an open heart, you begin to perceive consistent patterns that point to a larger narrative, a cosmic story that has been preserved in fragments for those who seek a deeper knowledge about our spiritual origins. What is particularly intriguing is how these pieces scattered across different traditions form a coherent picture when juxtaposed. Texts such as the Apocalypse of Adam, found in the Nag Hammadi library, narrate how superior knowledge was transmitted to Adam and then preserved through specific lineages throughout history. Try this exercise. When studying different ancient texts, note the recurring patterns and themes related to creation and celestial beings. You'll begin to perceive a consistent narrative emerging from the shadows, a story that transcends individual traditions and points to a universal truth that was available at the dawn of humanity. This practical approach helps develop your spiritual discernment, allowing you to recognize the essence of truth even when it appears in different forms. Why were these crucial texts kept outside official scriptures? Historical evidence suggests that decisions about what to include in the biblical canon were often influenced by political and social considerations, not just spiritual ones. Religious leaders of antiquity feared that certain revelations might be misinterpreted or lead to divisions among the faithful. Just imagine, information about rebellious celestial beings and multiple creations could shake the simple faith necessary for forming communities. There are historical records of intense debates about which texts should be considered inspired and which should be labeled as apocryphal. This filtering of spiritual knowledge created a system where certain profound truths were preserved only for those who were ready to receive them, while a simplified version of the creation story was presented to the general population. The rediscovery of these ancient texts in our era is no coincidence. As humanity's collective consciousness expands, we are ready to reintegrate aspects of spiritual knowledge that were kept separate. When you feel that internal restlessness, that sensation that there is more to the creation story than you were taught, you are responding to a call to reconnect with this ancestral wisdom. Many people on journeys of spiritual awakening report surprising synchronicities when studying these texts, as if an internal guide were directing them exactly to the information they need for their next step of growth. This journey of rediscovery is not about rejecting tradition, but rather deepening it, seeing beyond the surface to understand the deeper dimensions of our spiritual heritage. In doing so, each person becomes a living link in the chain of transmission of this knowledge, connecting the ancestral past with the emerging future of human consciousness. The creation of human beings takes on a much deeper meaning when viewed through the lens of this lost chapter. We weren't created simply to inhabit a paradisiacal garden and multiply. Our existence has a much grander cosmic purpose. Think about it. What if Adam wasn't just the first man, but the first restorer, strategically placed by the Creator to begin the healing process of an already fractured reality? This transformative perspective suggests that humanity was conceived as part of a divine plan of restoration, bearers of a spark of consciousness capable of reconnecting what was separated in the primordial rebellion. When we experience that inexplicable impulse to seek meaning beyond material existence, we are responding to this original vocation imprinted in our essence. This concept of cosmic repair appears in ancient traditions as tikkun olam, the idea that each conscious act of kindness and truth contributes to the restoration of the universe's original harmony. Man, that changes everything, doesn't it? Each time you choose love instead of fear, compassion instead of indifference, you are literally participating in this process of universal healing. Awakening consciousness in this perspective is not just a path of personal development, but an active participation in the cosmic purpose for which we were created. Jesus spoke of this when he mentioned the kingdom of heaven that must be manifested on earth as it is in heaven. An allusion to this restoration of divine order that begins within us and expands to all creation. The human journey on earth can be understood as a learning field where we are rediscovering our true nature and purpose. The challenges we face are not punishments, but opportunities to develop the consciousness necessary to participate in this process of cosmic restoration. Try this practical exercise. The next time you face a significant challenge, ask yourself, what quality of consciousness is this challenge inviting me to develop? You'll realize that each difficult situation is in fact an invitation to manifest a facet of divine energy that helps restore harmony. People who practice this type of reflection often report a profound shift in their relationship with problems, seeing them no longer as obstacles, but as catalysts for the spiritual awakening necessary to fulfill their greater purpose. This understanding also casts new light on the meaning of our everyday choices. If each conscious action contributes to the restoration of cosmic order, then even the simplest gestures carry transcendental significance. When you practice conscious presence, cultivating qualities such as love, compassion, and gratitude, you are literally channeling frequencies of light that help transform the chaotic energies resulting from the ancient rebellion. It's no coincidence that all authentic spiritual traditions emphasize the importance of consciousness in the present moment. It is in this point of power, in the now, that we have the ability to align our choices with the original divine purpose. By doing this repeatedly, we become increasingly efficient conductors of the restorative energy that flows from the source of all that is. Human history, seen from this perspective, is not a linear narrative of material progress, but a spiral of collective awakening that gradually brings us closer to the realization of our cosmic purpose. The great spiritual masters who have emerged throughout the centuries, including Jesus, served as beacons that illuminated this path of return to original harmony. Their teachings, when understood in their essence, always point to this process of restoration through the awakening of consciousness. And most extraordinary, we are living in a unique moment in history when an unprecedented number of people are simultaneously awakening to this truth. This collective awakening is not coincidence, but part of the unfolding of this cosmic plan of restoration. As more and more people recognize and embrace their role in this process, the collective capacity to manifest planetary healing amplifies exponentially, preparing the way for the next phase of this grand spiritual journey. We are entering an extraordinary period in human history, where the veils that have hidden these ancestral truths begin to dissipate. It's no coincidence that ancient texts are being rediscovered, translated, and shared on an unprecedented scale. It's as if a cosmic clock had reached a specific moment, activating a revelation mechanism programmed since the beginning of time. Many ancient texts, including passages from the Book of Daniel, suggest that certain knowledge would be sealed until the time of the end, not the end of the world, but the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. This transition phase we're living through now is precisely the moment when, according to these prophecies, the secrets guarded for millennia would be gradually revealed to humanity prepared to receive them. The principle is clear. What was sealed at the beginning will be opened at the end. This divine pattern of symmetry suggests that human history is moving toward a moment of total revelation, where the fragmented pieces of truth will be reintegrated into a unified understanding. Look how interesting. When you feel that expansion of consciousness, those moments of sudden clarity about the greater meaning of existence, you are experiencing on a personal scale the same process that is occurring on a planetary scale. Many people on journeys of spiritual awakening report powerful experiences of reconnection with ancestral memories and knowledge that seem to come from elsewhere. These are not fantasies, but manifestations of the unsealing process that is underway as humanity's collective consciousness reaches the capacity to reintegrate these primordial truths. The scriptures speak of a book sealed with 7 seals that would be opened in the final times, revealing truths that would fundamentally transform our understanding of reality. Try this practice. During moments of quiet reflection, visualize yourself as a conscious receiver of these revelations that are flowing to earth at this moment. Many people discover that by intentionally opening themselves to receive this wisdom, they begin to have surprising insights and synchronicities that guide them to specific information they need for their next step on the path of awakening. This process doesn't happen just intellectually, but involves an opening of the heart and a purification of perception. Jesus spoke of this when he said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God," a reference to the clarity of perception that allows us to recognize divine truths as they are revealed. What makes this period so significant is that we are not just rediscovering ancient knowledge, we are actively participating in the conclusion of the cosmic cycle that began with that first rebellion. The return of Christ, understood in its deepest sense, represents the moment of total integration between the spiritual and the material, the final reconciliation of the dimensions that were separated at the beginning of time. This is not a passive expectation of an external event, but a call to become conscious participants in this process of cosmic reintegration. Each person who awakens to this greater truth and begins to live from this expanded consciousness becomes a focal point through which this energy of reunification can flow into the world. By practicing conscious presence and cultivating qualities such as unconditional love, forgiveness, and compassion, you literally become a portal through which the new heaven and new earth can manifest. The period we are living through is, therefore, not just the end of a cycle, but the gestation of a new reality. The intense challenges we see in the world are not signs of failure, but necessary birth contractions for this new cycle of creation. The progressive revelation of ancient secrets serves as a map to navigate this transition, offering perspectives that transcend the limitations of conventional belief systems. As more people awaken to their role in this cosmic drama, a network of consciousness forms that sustains and amplifies this process of planetary transformation. This is the true second coming, not simply the return of a historical figure, but the manifestation of Christ consciousness through an awakened humanity, preparing the way for the final reunification between heaven and earth, between the spiritual dimension and the material, thus completing the great cycle that began even before the physical creation of the universe. And there it is, the story behind the lost chapter of Genesis that reveals our true cosmic purpose. So, what should you do with this transformative knowledge? Ask yourself, how would your life change if you lived consciously as a restorer, of divine order, not just as a passive inhabitant of this planet? What decisions would you make differently, knowing that each conscious act helps heal the cosmic fractures that preceded our existence? Don't let this revelation be just another interesting piece of information. Apply it. Start right now practicing conscious presence, recognizing your role in this great restoration plan. Observe how your perception of reality transforms when you see challenges as opportunities to manifest the light that dissolves primordial chaos. Are you ready to be part of this consciousness revolution? Or will you continue living in the incomplete version of the story? The choice you make today will determine your role in this crucial moment in humanity's spiritual history. If this content awakened something in you, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications.